All right, here we are again, another weekend.
What is up, guys? And what was up with the race today? Saudi Arabia. There's a lot to talk about, a lot to unpack.
Very exciting.
We have been drinking since the race started, so I feel like there was an emotional race, and I feel like our drinks might make it a little more emotional for everybody. Only because we had a lot to say during the race. There was a lot of screaming, a lot of yelling.
We were.
Lots to say, lots to talk about. And of course, I have notes, I have questions, but before we do that, I just want to get initial reactions on the Saudi Arabia saga that we just watched.
For me personally, I've been complaining the last few podcasts that there's not been any drama and it hasn't been exciting, and I got it all today. So I was sweating, I was crying, I was screaming, I was very happy with all of everything that turned out. But man, was it an emotional roller coaster.
James?
I think there are eras through every generation of cars. You know, we're in the turbo era. Mm-hmm. I had brought it up earlier. It was Jenson Button, I believe, in an interview where he said, if you miss the Senna and Prost battles and the fight for the championship in the early 1990s or the late 1980s, we're seeing it now. And this is what I've been wanting to see for the past 5 or 6 years since we've been watching Formula One. So those are my thoughts. This is a very exciting time.
Now, this race, we made a comment during the race, is this, and we probably have to do the research on this, is this the most champions on the track at one time? And do you think that affects the race and the way people race?
I definitely think that it does. Personally, I think you can tell the difference between a champion and you can tell the difference between who's not a champion. I think to talk about Max today really showed his age and the way that he drove and his temperament compared to a 4-time world champion like Sebastian Vettel, who dealt with a lot of drama himself, but didn't get super worked up and didn't make the mistakes that Max Verstappen did. So I'm happy.
I do want to say that, yes, Max did show his immaturity. I think there's some stuff that he could have done different. However, the pettiness started right off the bat. Some of Lewis's comments, of course, the minute he gets in the pit and gets out ahead is fine. The minute Max Verstappen gets a free tire change, he's complaining that this is a silly rule. I mean, the fact that he was on the radio asking, can he change his tires right now? I mean, I'm sorry. Are you new to Formula One, Lewis? Is this your first time going on the track? Have you never experienced a red flag before where you park your car and they change parts on the spot? So the pettiness went both ways. I think being on the track wise, Lewis is a little more mature. He's probably a little more careful on it. Max a little more reckless, but that's what makes it fun. James?
Well, I'm just going to touch on the fact that Jessica's always biased. So
yes, absolutely.
I already think you're already a little too harsh on Max, because for you to say that he doesn't have that championship mentality just because he's a little bit younger than...
That's not what I said.
What did you say then?
I just said that he showed his age. I didn't say he didn't. I didn't say he had championship
mentality. No, but you prefaced it by saying, I forgot what you said.
No, I said that you can tell the difference between a champion and who isn't a champion based on the decisions. No, I didn't say he didn't have championship mentality.
That's insinuating that Max isn't a championship contender.
It's insinuating that because he hasn't won a championship, he's not as mature.
Or he's just pushing himself to get his first championship.
But at what
Why
cost?
Not take the risk?
He might lose it all with this cost.
So the background you hear, Mama is complaining about this discussion, but this is exactly what happened on the track. I feel like your discussion is exactly what was going on the track. Disagreement on who is the better driver, who has the right to do what, and I think essentially that's what made this race very exciting. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, new track, who this? This track was brand new. Everyone kept saying it's such a great track. It's a fast track. Now, not the fastest track on Formula One, but overall.
Second fastest.
The second fastest.
Because the first one is Monza, right?
Right. And they expected this to be a fast race. Of course, there was a lot of fights we'll get to. But new track, what do you guys think of the new track?
Sketchy.
Just sketchy?
Yeah, I think it was a sketchy track all around.
I liked it.
Really?
Obviously, I'm not the one driving it. I think some of the drivers had some comments to say about it, that it was a little bit more dangerous than the other tracks on the calendar, but I enjoyed it.
I think with any street circuit, it makes it difficult when there's an accident or an incident on the track. It actually slows down the action. You have to clear it. There's not enough room to get cars out of the way a little faster. But being a new track, I think the drivers overall were enjoying the layout of the track. I mean, it's new for them. That's why they were having a good time.
This track is cool.
Are you having fun?
But I would say for me, being as exciting as it was at the end, even with the stoppages, I think it was a great track, a good looking track.
I don't know. It's a very narrow track. Part of it's a street circuit. It's very fast. It's obvious from the amount of crashes we had today that it's just not necessarily the best. That's why I think it's sketchy. I mean, it was very fun to watch. Like I said, I've been wanting drama. I've been wanting competitiveness. I've been wanting to get hyped and up out of my chair and screaming at the TV, and today gave that to me. But it's like,
The level of excitement was definitely high.
Right.
Every time I see a street circuit, I always a little stressed out. I myself have driven most of the street circuits through the Formula One game, of course. And those are the ones that I usually stress out a little more. So I can only imagine being a new track that the drivers are on the street.
You're talking about Azerbaijan, huh?
Azerbaijan.
I know that one.
Azerbaijan. Man, that one's a killer. Yes, I know that this is a video game and not in real life.
We like it.
But then again, I'm not a professional driver. Let's talk about red flags. Red flags, safety cars. What's up with that?
Well, you know what? I would like to bring up, out of the 5 or 6 seasons we've been watching a Formula One, this season and last season has to have been the most red flags. And, I didn't even know what a red flag was until last season. So it's interesting to see, is it the regulations that are changing that are causing more red flags? Or what is the reason that they're finally bringing them out? Because I don't necessarily think that there was any less accidents 3 or 4 years ago than there is now. Like, what's changed that's caused these big stoppages?
I have to agree with that. And again, we haven't been following Formula One for the past 20 years. It's been more like the last 4 years.
4 or 5 years.
Yeah,
4 or 5 years. So, I have to agree with you. I think the red flags and the yellow flag, they happen, but the red flags for sure, the stoppages, the cars get into the pit lane and get in to do some changes. It is a gamble that the cars take coming into the race when they don't want to pit. They're hoping it's going to be a flag and they're going to be able to use that time to switch some parts or the tires. So I would agree. I think the red flags are kind of a new thing that we're experiencing, and strategy wise is brilliant. I think one comment that, going back to the Hamilton saying, can he change his tires? Of course he can, and he's been there before. It was a huge gamble that Red Bull took not going in. And I have to do it. I'm going to jump topics here. Formula 2 probably decided a lot of the strategy for these teams, given what they saw in the Formula 2 race, which, of course, if you didn't watch it, there was an accident right off the bat. Once they started, there was another accident, and the race essentially ended with less than 10 laps raced. And I think half points were awarded. So,
which I think is unfair in the sense that I don't think Formula 2 drivers should have been driving on the track anyways. If you're at the peak performance as a Formula 1 driver and you're still making mistakes and you're still crashing, there's no reason Formula 2 drivers should be on that track.
I disagree with that.
I think that it's the worst possible scenario. That's why somebody's dead.
Well, not today.
Not today.
No, but just in general. They're not equipped to be able to handle the same tracks.
James, you said you disagree?
I just disagree with that. You're in Formula 2. You're in contention. These drivers are in contention to be in Formula 1 to be picked up from a Formula 1 team. Like, you're not going to put them on the sideline at this new track. I think, if anything, this is the perfect time to show what you have to other Formula 1 teams, so that way you could potentially be picked up.
But you see, I've talked about this in other podcasts. I think that they're bringing drivers up too young. So pulling people from Formula 2 when they're 19, 18 isn't a great decision already.
So maybe the question is, and I kind of agree with both of you in a sense. You have to get to a certain point where you can actually move on to Formula 1, and of course driving those same tracks is what's going to get you there. But maybe there should be a higher level of scrutiny when it comes to a driver. I think we joked earlier a little bit saying if you're driving a car and more than 2 parts fall off of the car, they should just take you off the track and say, listen, this is a shit box. You're a danger to everybody else. So maybe, for the young drivers, if once you have a certain number of incidents, and I know there's protocols and safety protocols established already, but once you have too many, you're like, maybe you're not ready for the type of speed that this car takes. Therefore, you're a liability to all the other drivers on the track. But there's got to be a way for them to be able to get to Formula One, and the only way to get there is to get that experience and to get that experience on the track that you're going to be driving.
Which, and I can understand that perspective. Is like there's no other way to learn it but to do it. But I think it definitely puts what's the word I'm looking for? Like it puts them in harm's way almost.
Yeah, no, I can see that. And again,
I think Formula One is doing, the FIA is doing not the most they can, but they're doing their best to be able to protect all drivers, not just Formula One, Formula Two, Formula Three.
Of course, but like I said, if some of these are supposed to be the top 20 drivers in the world. And if they're making mistakes, how can you look at Formula 2 and say like they're ready to drive the same track? That's what I can't understand.
Well, we also know that money plays a big thing, so
absolutely.
Of course.
Mick Schumacher and Mazepin crashed, so
they shouldn't have been in Formula One either.
And I would say one of the best things about Formula One that I enjoy is that there's no secrecy and there's no ifs, ands, or buts about the fact that this is a money-driven event.
Was it Drive to Survive when Gunther Steiner?
Oh, right.
Gunther Steiner. He pretty much was like, oh, he's going to bring the money in Drive to Survive. And he was like, we're going to get him on. So, yeah, I get that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the stewards are working overtime today. It was a hard day. It was a hard day for them. You made a comment during the race saying that no one's going to do anything on the last race because the drivers are tied. They're going to try to stay out of it because it's going to be controversial. I think they were trying to do that this time around. I think they were trying to not interfere with racing. They were trying to stay away. Obviously, there was a lot of incidents going on. I think there still was one that said it was going to be investigated afterwards, and they said, no, everything's fine. I mean, the stewards were working overtime. How do you guys feel about the stewards making decisions that could potentially, directly affect the championship?
I wouldn't want to be in their position.
I don't think it's the stewards that necessarily make the decisions of the championship. I think it's the drivers' poor choices.
There were certainly some controversial calls, and again, it depends on whose side you're on. Obviously, you lean more towards Mercedes.
But if the driver didn't do anything wrong, there would be nothing for the stewards to discuss.
Well, we talked about this earlier a little bit. There was an incident during practice where Lewis allegedly ignored the yellow flag, the double yellow flags. Now, the comment was it wasn't a real double yellow. It was just a mistake, and the light went off. But he still ignored it. So had it not been a drill,
off and then on, or went on and then off.
But there was still that ignore, and he didn't get a penalty for it, so he ignored it. So
he got penalized fee wise, right? Or is that for a separate incident?
That was for a
separate incident. Which, on that, to the same point, to that aspect, he gets penalized for that. But that was not his fault. That was his team's fault.
Right.
So I want to say that he ignored the double yellows, though it wasn't a real double yellow. It was a mistake. So they kind of let it go. But the way to make up for that is to fine him for something that wasn't even his fault in the first place.
Well, he did something with Mazepin, right? That's why he got fined.
He didn't get out of the way.
He didn't get out. He held him up.
Right, but that was his team not telling him that he was.
So it evened out, is what you're saying.
So they kind of evened it out. But is that fair? In some point that maybe Red Bull has a point saying, "Wait a minute, if that would have been us, you might have given us a penalty."
You know, to bank off what you're saying, I do feel like you say, oh, well, would they have punished Max? But I feel like they almost punished Lewis harder because he should know better. So I don't think that they necessarily would have punished Max either.
No, I see that. Yeah.
I feel like they punish Lewis harder because they expect better from him. It's like the parents, like, you're the oldest, you should know better.
I see that. I see that from your side, since you are a Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton enthusiast. I don't think it necessarily applies. I think Lewis gets a little more of a slack because he is Lewis Hamilton. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve it. Is it fair? No, but sports are not fair. Nothing is fair.
But you said slack. He doesn't get more slack. He gets penalized harder.
Not according to the record.
Yes, he does.
He ignored double yellows. And got nothing.
But it was an
for it.
error.
He also rear-ended Max Verstappen.
He also rear-ended
That was Max's fault. That's up. You know what? You know what? We're not going to talk about that because the FIA hasn't even made their decision. So you guys could be wrong or I could be wrong, but we don't know. We're not the FIA.
Well, we're not the FIA. We're going to talk about it. They're going to say something about it. Looking at the race, watching the race as it happened, watching the replay, which, by the way, F1, what the hell? The replays kind of got in the way of the action.
Oh my God.
Bottas was behind Ocon for a long time.
And we didn't even see
and we didn't get to see that battle. We saw the replay of when he actually did it. There was a couple of exciting moments that were literally, there was nothing going on. Lewis was 5 seconds ahead of Max. There was nobody behind him, and somehow the camera stayed on them and not the action.
Finish line.
After the
And it would
finish line,
have been a
even.
beautiful photo finish for Bottas. Beautiful.
Well, it was a good photo finish still, but we didn't watch it in real time. We watched it in replay, which
So they have to work on that. I know there was a complaint last year, or maybe the year before, when they said they never showed the back of the grid, and then they started showing the back of the grid a little more. Well, the complaint is you got to stop it with the replays. Show me the replays after the race.
Which, you know what? My boy Ricardo did so good today. He took a gamble on not pitting, and he ended up like fifth.
And again, that was another close battle between him and Bottas.
Right.
And we saw nothing of that until the replay showed up of Bottas passing him.
Which, granted, first, second, and third is a big deal. But Bottas was fighting for third, and they didn't even show that.
With as many flags that we had today and red flags, I feel like there was plenty of opportunity to show us replays of the action, not in the middle of a battle that you could have shown.
Right.
But
absolutely. I think it was poor.
unpopular opinion or popular opinion, you decide. So is this the closest a championship? I know for us, this is the closest we've seen on a championship, but is this the closest a championship we've seen in F1?
I mean, they're neck and neck with points. I think even with Rosberg, they were Hamilton and Rosberg. Somebody was up at the end of the second to last race before somebody won in Abu Dhabi. I don't think that they were even.
Well, the commentators did say that this is the 30th race where the championship is going to be declared at the last race of the season.
Wow, and they've been doing Formula One
For
since
70, we just had the 70th last year, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
71 years.
and it's only happened 30 times. That's crazy.
Yeah, but as far as point wise, we're going dead even into Abu Dhabi. I don't know. Again, we'd have to look into it, but I don't know of any other race that's been dead last into the last race.
Which is crazy because even if Hamilton got sixth and Max Verstappen got fifth, like Max would win, which is crazy. It's really decided by whoever's ahead.
Absolutely. I mean, this is half a point. Half a point will decide this.
If Lewis didn't get that half point this race, Max would be ahead by 1 point.
1 point, yeah. If he didn't get the fastest lap.
Lewis didn't get a half a point this race.
I'm sorry.
1 point.
1 point.
Fastest
1 point.
lap.
Okay, fastest lap might be
fastest lap,
what?
1 extra point.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. So they're tied. So we're going in. I mean, we looked it up, of course, and even if they were tied, if this was the last race and they were tied, Max would still win because the championship goes to whoever had the most podiums. And this criteria that you keep going down and down. So they make sure that you can never have a full-on tie on that. Now, that's the championship for the driver constructor. Mercedes is at 40 points. Is that what it's
41.
41 points?
I think.
So bad luck for Sergio. He got tagged by Leclerc, which, by the way, Leclerc's a douche. I don't
But
know.
I'm the biased one. It's just me.
No. Listen, Leclerc's a great driver. He's a good driver. He's a fast driver. But he is a douche. When you're behind a guy and then you tag him on the back and say, I guess Sergio didn't see me. How did he see you if you're behind him? Come on.
You know, that's funny because that's 2 races. Actually, no, it was Brazil where Sainz said, "Oh, I got pushed out," or I got or what did he say? Dang it!
I got squeezed.
I got squeezed.
And then you look at the replay and there's like
There's
3
no
cars.
one on the left over here. He could have gone to the left.
Plenty of room. Exactly. Plenty of room. So, yeah, there was bad luck for Sergio. He was out. That put Red Bull in a pickle as far as the constructors. I don't think that constructors is their concern for the season. I think we've seen that. We talked about that before.
Right.
They're focused on the championship for the driver, which I totally understand. It's a huge boost of confidence. So you want to get that first.
Well, they probably want to keep Max. I mean, I'm sure his contract is going to be over soon.
Absolutely.
And if he's going to win a championship with them, he's going to want to stay with them. So I think that's a great decision on their part to push for the driver more than the constructors.
Absolutely. Fantasy world. Everybody loves Max. He's a great driver. I said fantasy world. Okay. I know you're
Okay.
a Mercedes fan. Let's say that Max has his pick of what team to go to. Where would you like to see Max if he's not with Red Bull?
It depends. Well,
There's a lot of
teams
factors.
now, or because we don't know what
Teams now.
the new regulations and the new design are going to
Right.
be.
Next year's going to be a different story. But teams now, I have a strong lean where he would have done really great this season. But where would you guys put Max?
McLaren.
You know what? I thought McLaren too.
That was my pick as well.
For sure.
I think
You
if
know
it-
what? Him and Ricardo already didn't work well together, and I like Ricardo better, so I'd rather
Lando
see
Norris
Who
can have a
says
good
he would have
relationship.
raised with
I was
Ricardo?
going to say, yeah.
But
What if,
that's what I mean. I don't want to see Ricardo gone. I would rather see Max Verstappen gone. So
I think this season, where if we can in a fantasy world, you put Max on another team this season, I would say McLaren would be a great team to put him on. Especially if you were gonna, I know the cars change next year, but if the cars are staying the same and we're going into next year, I think McLaren is going to be would have been a huge contender with the current livery that they have.
they're gonna be third in the constructors, right? They're almost tied with Ferrari.
I think Ferrari was ahead. We'll have to check the numbers and see if they stayed ahead on that.
yeah, especially with this race, because I think both. Actually, no.
M-
Yeah, we'll have to
McLaren
check.
finished fifth.
Ricardo did finish pretty high up.
Fifth or
so,
sixth. Yeah. And I think Lando was the one who was kind of fell behind.
Checking computers, please hold. This would be a good time to tell you about our sponsor.
Ooh.
Today's
Prosecco?
episode is sponsored by Prosecco. Add a splash of orange juice,
Oh, wow.
and you have a delicious mimosa. Prosecco to
Ferrari?
enhance your racing day.
Ferrari is 38 points ahead of McLaren.
48?
38.
38. Okay. So McLaren's got a chance. All they have to
38,
do
30
is-
and a half.
All they have to do is finish top 5 the next race.
Where did Ferrari finish last year?
I think they were 6th or 7th.
Oh, bad.
It was a bad year for Ferrari
very bad.
last year. Well, that's all the points I had, guys. Anything you guys want to add before we? The next, of course, this coming weekend is the championship.
I got
We
a
are-
question,
Yes. ask.
and I want to see who you guys take. My love, who do you want to win the world championship?
Max Verstappen.
I want you out as soon as later this afternoon. And you?
Max Verstappen.
Both of you guys need to get out. There's 2 doors. Pick one because I'm done.
Good, Gustavo.
I think Lewis is a fantastic driver. I think Lewis might be, and this is like with 90%, the better driver on the track right now. And I think we've seen that over and over again, even if it starts in the back. Same thing with Max. Max starts in the back, gets up. But I think Lewis is, going back to what you said earlier, Max showing his immaturity. I think Lewis' maturity does show, and even on those high 10 situations, he can probably outperform Max. And I'm not on the track. I wasn't on the car. I don't know. But looking at even starting at the qualifier, the fact that Max was ahead and having a great run, that he lost it at the last second, that's pressure. And I don't know if Lewis would have done that because he probably would have been savvy enough or had the experience enough to get around that turn and not mess up a good run. Again, they're both professional drivers and Max is a great driver, but I think Lewis does have the edge on that. However, as a fan of Formula One, as a fan of racing, how incredible it would be to have the first Dutch champion. It's such a great battle in heaven. And you know what that does? That sets him up for having a even better battle next year.
I will give one kudo to Max Verstappen.
Ooh.
It is that he will do anything it takes to win.
That mentality seems very, very familiar to another Formula One driver.
Named Lewis.
Oh, Lewis, I
with
guess.
the last
any-
name Hamilton.
But
also other drivers like, I don't know,
Ayrton
Senna,
Senna.
who's crashed into the other guy just so the guy wouldn't win.
Right. So I will give him
Allegedly.
that. I will say he will do whatever it takes to win, but there is risk versus reward. And sometimes the risk is greater than the reward. And I don't think he's been able to figure that out yet.
I think at the end of the day,
words.
What do you mean?
What do you mean?
Like today, he took so many risks and it didn't work out for him. So he got a 5-second penalty. So just because you're going to do anything it takes doesn't mean it's going to benefit you.
He got 5 seconds for going off track and not giving back the position, right? That was the
Right,
incident.
that was the- yeah.
Turn 3.
Right, but nonetheless, he could have backed out of it and he wouldn't have got a 5-second penalty.
They
but
both
he was
went off the track.
But he was too greedy. I'm just saying, you're going to do anything it takes, but it doesn't always work out in your favor.
I will say this. If you look at the race, if you look at the radio, if you hear the radio communications, Lewis Hamilton, one of the things that bothers me the most about him is that he complains a lot. But ultimately, it usually becomes the team making a decision that he disagrees with, and then he wins. I'm not saying they're controlling Hamilton, but they're managing that driver very well. For Max, it seems like he's driving the team. He's controlling the team because it doesn't matter what the team tells him. He seems to just do his own thing. Now, it works out for him very well most of the time, but in times like today, when the radio came over and said, give the plays back, he could have avoided the penalty if he wasn't a douche about it.
But he didn't get a penalty for... Wait, which part? What do you mean?
His penalty was for not giving the plays back right away.
No, I thought the penalty was for the turn 3 incident where... No.
He went off track, and, he didn't give the place back.
He didn't give the plays back. That was the penalty, the 5 seconds.
He should have gave it back right away.
So he got asked to give the position back twice?
Yes.
And he didn't do it.
Got it.
Now, I know we looked at the track and said Lewis could have gotten out of the way and gone around, didn't have to hit him. But if you look at the track, Verstappen, he did slow down, kind of in the middle, not to the right. I mean, he didn't do it right away. He didn't listen to the team. And I think if you listen to your team, you stick with your strategy, you can do a little better. We saw it with Norris when Norris made the decision to stay out, and then he spun out and lost the podium because of his own decision. The team left it after him. I think for Lewis, he complains, he yells a lot, and I hate that about him. But at the end of the day,
it's not really up to him.
He yells at the team for the decision, and he usually ends up winning. Unpopular opinion.
All right. Well, I guess we can sign off. There's one more race. Can we talk about potentially what we're going to do in the meantime while Formula One is not going? What are we going to do to keep
We're going to go back to our regular scheduled programming. James did some track days. We got to recap those track days. One of them, you forgot to turn the camera on.
All of them. The second through fifth session, I did not have the camera on.
I meant one track day, not all of them. But yes, you forgot the camera. So but we'll talk about those track days that he's been doing. It definitely enhances our podcast and our knowledge when it comes to racing. There was an issue with cold tires in the first session last time. We'll talk about that.
Yes.
We'll talk about getting a personal best and what worked, what didn't work.
But we will be back.
We'll be back. So stay tuned.
Cheers.
Cheers.